Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P. Joe P. Zapia. With me today is Derrickson. That's right, they're one entity, Derek Brown and Andrew Erickson. I can't think of a more powerful entity of these two guys, except maybe Andrew Erickson's two biceps. And they're here on the show today, too, especially on the YouTube channel in high definition if you need to see them. And we are here talking football, as we always here on Fantasy Pros. And today it's about the high upside players at running back and wide receiver. We always like to look at those tier jumpers, these guys that have the potential to really outperform the ADP. This is something very important. And we've talked a lot about league winners. We've talked about upside and things like that. And I think it's important that we understand that there's lots of different guys out there. And we've given a lot of love to some players. We're going to talk about them at the top. But we're going to dive into some new names as well, because some of these drafts you're doing are a little deeper, but also we think we want to give some love and spread it around a little bit. Derek Brown, speaking of spreading it around, the beard looks very tight today. I know it is freshly combed. Is that the same thing that they do with the horses before, like the Belmont Stakes? Is the same brush you guys use or what?
Pretty much. I mean, you got to slap the flies away. You got to get things in order, kind of get pretty before the show. You saw me like going through with a fine, wonderful brush beforehand. You got to get pretty, Joe. You know how this goes, man.
I do. I wax my giant bald head before every single program. That's why it looks so good on the YouTube channel. Andrew Erickson, I know your biceps are cramping up a little bit. It was a tough workout today. Derek Brown said the bicep cramp was really from you at Patriots camp trying to hold your phone and getting very upset as Jacoby Myers losing potential touches from some other wide receivers. Is that true?
I think it might be, because I've never felt more sore in my arms before. And I don't know why. And I'm trying to figure out what was different. And I haven't gone to Patriots training camp since last year. So that's the only logical explanation.
There you go. There it is. All right, let's dive into the names. Before we do, obviously, we got some business to take care of. We have that giveaway, a CD Lamb autographed jersey, thanks to our good friends. And I mean good. Actually, I mean great. They're great friends. They're terrific. They send cards on the holidays. I love pristineauction.com. You should check out all the stuff they've got over there. And they've got all these autographed jerseys, including the CD Lamb jersey that could be yours. All you have to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/fantasypros. That's what you do. You subscribe to the YouTube channel. Then you head over to fantasypros.com/contest to enter. Again, that's fantasypros.com/contest and a CD Lamb jersey. Ooh, I know you Cowboy fans out there want this autographed jersey, so go get yourself some. And of course, get yourself some championships while you're at it over at fantasypros.com/draftwizard, where you can get the draft assistant with Sync. Do you want me, Joey P, in the draft with you? I can hear a lot of people saying no, a lot of people saying yes. That's fair. I like the divide. The controversy drives ratings here at the program. But I'm telling you, the draft assistant with Sync is unbelievable. What you basically can do is choose the people that you want in there with you with the cheat sheets. You can go through all these different formats we have, and the draft assistant with Sync, that will help you in real time as your draft is going to give you insights about which team behind you does need a quarterback, which teams in front of you have already taken tight ends. It'll tell you how long you can wait for certain players to potentially come back to you. It's all the insights. It's all the intelligence you need. And look, let's be honest, we could all deal with a little bit more intelligence, okay? So the draft assistant with Sync is available, and it's only for our MVP and Hall of Fame subscribers, which brings me back to this, which is the offers. We're giving you free tools here at Fantasy Pros just for playing more fantasy football, for playing more DFS, for wagering. All you have to do is go to fantasypros.com/offers. This is the game plan. You make a nice deposit right there. You go put some wagers. You want to bet the Packers over. You want to go bet the under on the Dolphins. You want to have some fun, do some things like that. Then you get 12 free months of our Fantasy Pros tools at the premium level. And that gets you the draft assistant with Sync, the cheat sheets, everything you need to be successful, and all of our amazing in-season tools to manage all of your leagues. And we know you've got lots of leagues, and even if you just got two, they're really important. Well, guess what? That's two, they're really important. We want to win them. So go to fantasypros.com/offers and check that out today. Find the deal that's right for you, and then get your one free year, 12 whole months, 365 days of the premium package over here at Fantasy Pros. And speaking of premium talent, I know when we talk about high upside guys, we've talked a lot about a few people. Ramondre Stevenson's one of them. We see the pathway. We see obviously that there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of buzz coming out of training camp already. We've talked once or twice about Courtland Sutton. I think I'm kind of gonna put a no Courtland Sutton big circle with the X through it, I think, for the rest of the show. And Sky Moore, another guy that I've talked about quite a bit. So those are three players we're not going to talk about in depth today. But D-Bro, we all think these are guys with huge high upside. And I just want to mention them at the top again, because we don't want to be remiss of mentioning the main guys that we've been talking about this whole offseason.
No, absolutely. And you talked about the Lamb jersey giveaway. I would love to further indulge Cowboys fans and bring up Tony Pollard, but we talked about him on League Winners. So people need to go check that episode if they want the entire soliloquy about why you should love Tony Pollard. But Joe, if I'm going to lead us off here and talk about running backs that we're thinking about have high upside, the first name that I got to mention here is DeAndre Swift. I love his outlook for this season. And it's not just the pass game prowess that we saw last year, or how good he was before he went down with the AC joint issues, like weeks 1 through 11, RB7. He was averaging 19 touches per game. He was 8th in yards per route run. Where I think DeAndre Swift's massive upside comes this year is that we've talked about, we low-key like the Detroit offense. We like this team for this year. Okay, we think this offense is going to be better, i.e. it's going to be in the red zone more. And I think that's going to help prop up even more higher touchdown expectations for DeAndre Swift, because the Lions were terrible last year in scoring points. 25th in points per game. They were 29th and 34th in red zone scoring attempts and their opportunity share in the red zone last year. If they get into the red zone, they sustain more drives because they're a better offense, we could see Swift's touchdown equity go through the roof.
Yeah, and Swift is one of these players, along with this Detroit team, that, look, there was flashes last year. And I think the competitiveness and the way this team fought every game and never really folded up the tents, I was very impressed with that. And I think if they can just carry over that mentality this year with better health, they could really improve, despite the limitations Jared Goff puts on an offense. And he does put limitations, but let's not forget, he did get to a Super Bowl. I mean, for all the limitations we can talk about Jared Goff, not a lot of quarterbacks can say they got to a Super Bowl. So I will say that he might be good enough to help sustain this offense. And the thing I like about Swift, too, from the big wide receiver guy, which is me, is that he's going a little bit later. And to me, he has just as much value as a guy like Mixon who's going ahead of him, or maybe even, a Nick Chubb or somebody like that. Sometimes certain drafts will go ahead. And I like that because it allows me to get that big wide receiver and then still big time RB1 upside with Swift. So I'm in agreement there on Swift. Let's switch over to a running back on your list, Andrew Erickson. Give me a high upside running back that you'd like to talk about today.
I will not forget his name this time. I'm going to go with Javonte Williams for the Denver Broncos.
Name.
Yes, Juggernaut Javonte himself. So the thing with Javonte Williams is, before Melvin Gordon signed with the Denver Broncos, or re-signed with the Broncos, basically Javonte Williams was viewed as a first-round pick. Locked and loaded, this guy is going to absolutely smash after his rookie year, where he was super efficient, second in forced missed tackles, first in missed tackles forced per attempt. And in the one game that he played without Gordon last year, he scored 27 fantasy points against the Chiefs. And we were all salivating at the idea of Javonte Williams as the RB1 in the Broncos offense, and now adding Russell Wilson into the fold is like, oh my God, this guy's going to the moon. And then they re-sign Melvin Gordon. And that puts a little bit of a damper on, okay, is the upside still going to be there? The upside is still there, because there's a scenario where, Gordon gets hurt, he gets phased out of the offense, they don't use him as much in tandem as they did last year, and that's the path to success. Now, you have to pay a premium for the upside for Javonte Williams. He's not cheap. In a lot of ADPs, you still have to pay a top 10 running back price. And at worst case, if he does what he did last year, he's RB17, he doesn't necessarily bust for your lineup. He disappoints. I guess I would kind of compare it to Antonio Gibson last year. Gibson didn't live up to the upside potential that a lot of people expected out of him, but he still was, an RB1 at the end of the day. So he didn't absolutely kill you, but he didn't really hit on that upside. I kind of view Javonte Williams in a bit of a similar light. So, but the upside is definitely undeniable.
There's a universe, and it's not an odd one when you look at the ADP, and I've done some mock drafts already with it, where you can start early wide receiver, by the way, like let's say in the top 5 picks, and then you can come away with maybe Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, somebody like that. Then when it comes back around to you, get Saquon Barkley and then Javonte Williams in the 3rd round. And my goodness, do I like that potential start. And it's funny because the minute Melvin Gordon signed, I went out there in Dynasty Leagues and tried to buy up all the Javonte Williams I could, because I knew there would be just a disappointment everywhere. But you have to see the forest through the trees. You have to say, okay, how long is this Melvin Gordon thing going to go? It might not last this year. It's possible. He's an older back. So there's always that possibility he doesn't even make it through the whole season necessarily, and Javonte balls out and has this great year. Or you have to wait one more season. Oh, well, a little bit more patience can serve you well. But in redraft, I still see the upside, and I'm with you. He was a top 5 back before that Gordon signing potentially. And now there's another back that we got to talk about too, who also signed with a new team, Derek Brown. That's Chase Edmonds, who's next on your list. So there's muddiness here, but there's also upside. Let's talk about the upside, because there were moments and glances of what Chase Edmonds could be as a lead back. We've seen it. Can he realize that in Miami?
I think he can, Joe. And I get the luxury of bringing up Chase Edmonds because Friedman's not on this show, because I know he'd be pushing back and raining on my parade here. But I love Chase Edmonds' upside for this season. We know that Miami's offensive line is going to be improved in run blocking. Mm-hmm. After you had Teron Armstead and Connor Williams, who, before he was banged up last year, Teron Armstead was literally the last 3 seasons before that, top 26 tackle and run blocking grades. Connor Williams was 13th himself. But if we're going to get back to not just the line that he's running behind, Chase Edmonds has shown us in small samples that 1, he's a productive player, and 2, an explosive player over the last 2 seasons. The guy's only got 15 games over the last 2 years where he has logged 50% or more snaps. He's finished as a top 24 running back in 67% of those games. So even like right now, you go do best ball drafts, you're looking at our ECR. He's RB 29, RB 30. You can get him as in the RB 3 range. And I think it's ludicrous because this is a player that's going to an offense with a better offensive line. We believe that the run game is going to be centric to how the Dolphins offense operates. And they were also aggressive. And we saw stuff out on social media yesterday about there were other teams in the weeds, maybe the Bills, that wanted Chase Edmonds. And the Dolphins said, he's ours. And that tells you a lot, because the closest thing we get from team wants needs is free agency and the NFL draft. And so their aggressiveness going after Chase Edmonds says a lot to me, as well as his upside in this offense for a player that in 2020 led all running backs in slot targets and slot receiving yards. And he's literally been 11th and 20th in yards created per touch. I think his upside is through the roof this year, guys.
Well, he's going in an interesting spot too, because he's an RB3, which I think is appropriate. And when you look at the RB3s, this is yet again why I like the early, it's funny, you keep going back to the same theme, why Joe likes early wide receiver so much, and I do. And it's because I keep looking at these guys, AJ Dillon, Devin Singletary, Kareem Hunt, Ramondre Stevenson, and when you know it, Tony Pollard is there too. And of course, Chase Edmonds, number 33 in the ECR right now. Like, all these guys are there, and I'd rather take a couple shots at these guys, and hopefully I'm right about 1, maybe you get 2, maybe you take a shot on 3, and 2 out of 3 ain't bad, just like Meatloaf said. God rest in peace, Meatloaf. Love the Meatloaf. All right, let's go to another one of your running backs here, Erickson, that you think has high upside.
I'm going to go with Breece Hall, running back for the New York Jets. And I don't understand why people aren't more excited about Breece Hall, a rookie running back. And we see rookies enter into the NFL and hit the ground running at the running back position. And Breece Hall, the Jets talked about wanting to take him in the first round. Like, they were willing to trade back up into the first round, making Breece Hall potentially their 4th first-round pick. So we've already heard reports out of camp saying that he's already going to be the lead back, in a 60-40 split to start the season with Michael Carter. Remember, that's to start the year. But once Breece Hall is on the field and they realize how effective he is in all facets of the game, like, I only see that touch load and workload continuing to increase as the season progresses. You look at last year, what the Jets RB1 was able to do, looking at 14 to 15 touches per game over a 17-game sample, that's 240 touches. Every running back that hit that touch threshold last year was a top 15 running back. So you're already looking at Breece Hall just from a touch perspective, not even looking at how efficient he is.
Right.
He's going to be inside the high-end RB2 range. And then you have the additional upside of Breece Hall was a beast at Iowa State. Like, this guy was so good, and the only reason he's being viewed as a 4th-round pick is like, oh, well, he's on the Jets. Like, they suck. Like, they can't get better. But when you look at the Jets' offensive line, much improved, PFF's 13th ranked offensive line heading in to next season. You look at efficiency from Tevin Coleman and Michael Carter over the last 8 weeks of the 2021 season. Both of them were top 6 in PFF rushing grade. So I think Breece Hall could be efficient. I think he's going to catch passes. And that's the recipe for success and upside for a running back that's entering his first year in the NFL at 21 years old. So I love Breece Hall.
All right, let's go to another guy on your list. Derek Brown, who do you have that has high upside at the running back position?
Well, I talked about one of the running backs that the Bills missed on. Let's talk about the guy that they got with James Cook. And everybody talks about, oh, wait, he's just a sub back. I want the guy that's going to play all the passing downs for the Buffalo Bills, considering they were in 65% of their neutral script snaps last year. They were throwing the ball. They were 5th in passing attempts. So you're looking at, okay, there's a guy that's going to be out there every time they decide to pass the ball. Well, they're passing the ball for most of every game. That's probably a good thing. And then you marry this with James Cook, who's shown explosiveness at the collegiate level. I talked about the pass game prowess. And if you head over to Fantasy Points, you look at Graham Barfield's awesome work. Cook was right behind Michael Carter and J.K. Dobbins coming out of college in yards created per attempt. So this isn't just saying, okay, the pass game is massive upside for him. It's also his ability on the ground. Like, I'm not telling you if he can carve away 15 carries a game, but if he can get 5 targets a game, 6 targets a game, and then come away with 8 to 10 rushing attempts per game. Oh, and this is a team because people also say, well, Buffalo running backs, where did they get the touchdown upside and the equity? Again, let's harken back to the Bills love to pass. They also love to pass in the red zone. 12th and 10th in red zone passing rates of the last 2 years. I think James Cook, where he's going in drafts right now, is a steal in possibly the lead back on one of the league's best offenses, and people are not treating him that way in drafts.
You missed another key point, too, which is Devin Singletary's missed some time in his career. Let's be honest. At the NFL level, he has missed games. So if there's opportunity there as well for more touches, well, James Cook could be that guy. And very speedy. Let's just put it that way. In terms of the speed that he brings potentially to the table, that is otherworldly. And a little smaller than his brother. That's true. Not quite the same size, but in terms of speed, he's probably faster. I mean, we know he's faster, not even probably. All right, let's go to another one of your guys. Give me another running back, Erickson, that you think has some upside here at the position.
This one is, I think, one of the easiest ones for me. It's Kareem Hunt. You look at last year, he played just 8 games, 4 of which he finished as a top 6 running back. So this is him operating in a committee with Nick Chubb. He's still been super efficient with the football, top 10 in yards per snap last season, despite only scoring 5 touchdowns. The only other 2 running backs to do so were Christian McCaffrey and Ramondre Stevenson. And he was averaging 17 fantasy points per game, top 10 running back before his injury, around 15 touches per game. So we've seen it before with Kareem Hunt. We've seen him lead the NFL in rushing yards before. And not only does he have upside if he stays on the Cleveland Browns, there's an injury to Nick Chubb. The whispers out of Browns camp are that either him or Dearness Johnson, one of them's going to get cut, one of them's going to get traded. That's going to line up Kareem Hunt to potentially be a starting running back. You can list off, I think, close to like half the NFL teams where Kareem Hunt, you plop him into that depth chart and he's RB1, like immediately. Like you're looking at teams like the Texans, the Falcons, like we're like, oh, like maybe it's going to be this guy or this guy. It's like, okay, Kareem Hunt's like, if he lands there, oh, he's RB1 and now he's going in, the round 5, basically. So I think Hunt has so much potential. And when you're getting him in round 9, like I love him as my RB2 because at worst, okay, he's in a committee with Nick Chubb and getting you RB2 production. Awesome. But there's so many paths where he has additional production that he can give you. I think he's a smash.
Especially in the full PPR. In the full PPR, you have so many more options and ways you want to go about the running back position. And Hunt always just kind of falls into that mix. And I got to tell you, as we go on to this list, this is the grouping that I love the most. And I know some people talk about the RB dead zone. And I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. To me, this is my favorite spot. Like all these guys that are like 24 to 38, all these guys you can make some cases for, and they cost you a lot less in terms of draft capital. I love this. This is becoming my favorite show, and we're not even halfway over. All right, let's go to another one of your guys, Derek Brown. Who else you have on your list that is another high upside RB?
Well, Andrew Erickson has hammered the point home all offseason. I'm going to continue. I'm going to break out the hammer today and talk about we want players from good offenses. That leads me to Isaiah Spiller. I've talked about him all offseason. I think he's going to have a standalone role in this Chargers attack. And if anything were to happen to Austin Eckler, we would be ranking Isaiah Spiller as an RB1 weekly, without question. We've already heard buzz out of camp about how he's playing in the passing game. Oh, he's got a competition, which, whatever, veteran deference, a competition with Joshua Kelly, and there's no competition. Isaiah Spiller is going to be the RB2 on this team. That's going to happen. Kelly and Browntree have not done anything to show that they deserve to be on an NFL roster, much less being the RB2 on one of the league's best offenses. And Spiller, he has a versatile skill set. Not only is this a player that has shown in college, if you go look at the metrics of in him performing well in inside, outside zone runs, gap runs, all these different things, and he walked out of college with a 76th percentile collegiate target share. Spiller could be a 3-down back and phase into all parts of the game, especially catching passes out of the backfield, and of a standalone role. And if Austin Eckler were to miss any time, he is going to go sky high through the roof, be a top 10 running back we'd be ranking weekly. So Spiller's a guy that I think his upside, he should be going around the same range as Tony Pollard in drafts, and he's not. So I'll take the later upside.
That's a fascinating point you make there, too. For those people who don't watch college football like you and I do, explain to them, quickly. I think you kind of touched on a little bit of why he's different, but I feel like there's a fear out there that, well, isn't this guy just the next Kelly or the next Justin Jackson or the next Roundtree, that we get excited about who could be the secondary back there since Melvin Gordon's gone, and we see that there's potential for more, or potential for at least insurance for Eckler. What makes Spiller different? Is it just the college career in terms of the opportunity he received, or do you think just physical wise he's just better, bigger, stronger, faster than the other group?
I think he's just a better player overall. I mean, the testing metrics people want to go back to, and they say, oh, well, he didn't run a fast 40. I'm not talking to you like Isaiah Spiller is the best home run back in this class. Mm-hmm. No, but is he the best ground rule double, the best chunk runner in this class? You can make a really good case for that. And if you just go look at his percentage of 10-yard runs, he has a higher percentage of 10-yard runs. He's right behind Kenneth Walker, who had 16.7%. But he was even better than Breece Hall last year. So while Erickson talked about him earlier, and we like his upside as a home run threat, Spiller's versatility in all facets of the game and his ability to, maybe he's not ripping you the 50-yard runs, the 15, the 20-yard runs that still we love in fantasy, that sets him apart from these backs, and especially sets him apart for backs that haven't shown the ability to create any explosive plays in Joshua Kelly and Larry Roundtree.
We've been talking a lot on the show lately about having your plan A and your plan B and your plan C. If you're somebody that, wants to get a secondary back, right, and you're targeting, let's say, Tony Pollard, and that doesn't work out, and you go, okay, I want to target somebody else that's got some upside, and then people say, oh, well, they want to go ahead with Ken Walker, right? That's another very popular one people like. But if you look at the difference there, Walker right now currently in the ECR is higher than Spiller by a good amount. And I think that's kind of interesting. 31 for Walker right now in the ECR and Fantasy Pros as opposed to 45. So it's a whole round difference, if not two potentially. So if you don't want to reach with Walker, what Debro's saying is there's a guy in a better offense who might have the same redraft appeal potentially in Isaiah Spiller. And I think that's something y'all should stand up and notice. You need the plan Bs and Cs. Same concept, but different draft capital in case you don't get that first target guy. Give me the last target guy, Andrew Erickson, at the running back position for you before we switch gears to wide receiver.
Yeah, my last guy is PFF's 5th highest graded running back over the last 2 seasons, Green Bay Packers running back A.J. Dillon. And it's because I want the running back on this team, a good offense in the Green Bay Packers. I want the running back that's going to score the most touchdowns. That's why we want these offenses, because of touchdown equity. Now, it's sometimes hard to parse between, okay, who's going to get the most touches, who's going to get the most targets, but everything that the Green Bay Packers showed us last year with how they used A.J. Dillon in the red zone role, he was finished 11th in red zone touches, saw more carries inside the 10-yard line than Aaron Jones did. He's going to be the guy that they give the ball to at the goal line. That's what I think, and I'm willing to invest in that so many rounds after Aaron Jones comes off the board in round 2, where I can get A.J. Dillon in round 7. This guy can score 15 touchdowns in 2022, and no one would be surprised whatsoever. So I think that you want these offenses because of the touchdowns, and A.J. Dillon is going to score double-digit touchdowns this season.
Hallelujah. Amen. This is my dude. You know it. I mean, we came into this year and, even the Black Book, when we were all working together on that, we talked about, A.J. Dillon, man, I love A.J. Dillon this year. And, I know Fitz has been in on A.J. Dillon also, but the touchdowns are important. They're going to have to get the ball to other people and be more running back usage heavy in different ways here with both running backs. And you mentioned the draft capital. Yet again, if you like Aaron Jones, why pay Aaron Jones price when you get A.J. Dillon a few rounds later? I don't get it. And that's, to me, I'd much rather have CeeDee Lamb on my team than Aaron Jones this year. And that is exactly the pivot. That's your that you're looking at. And I love, again, this group of guys. We're going to go through the names one more time for everybody. So we already talked about Pollard and Stevenson. Obviously, again, we've got breakdowns on them on all the other shows we've done. It's a lot between the draft shows and the other shows. We've talked about them ad nauseum, but they're in this list. But then we talked about Javonte Williams, another guy, huge, massive upside. DeAndre Swift, another guy too, just huge, massive upside. He's already being valued as an RB1, but there's top 5 potential in there, which we all have to understand and recognize and account for. Breece Hall, Chase Edmonds, James Cook, Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Spiller, and A.J. Dillon. This is a great list. I love these running backs. The one for me that I'm a little less on is Chase Edmonds and James Cook, just because the situations are a little bit muddier and the path is a little bit harder potentially. But I think all these guys are worth targeting in drafts, and I know my colleagues clearly do as well. So make sure you make the list of them. Let's go to wide receivers, and let's start with Erickson on this one. Give me a wide receiver that's got big-time upside for you in 2022, Andrew.
It's Gabriel Davis for the Buffalo
Never
Bills.
heard of him.
I never heard of Gabriel Davis. I famously own a Gabriel Davis jersey now, so
that's right.
I'm buying the breakout for Davis.
You're invested spiritually, financially, just invested across the board.
We're still crossing our fingers that that's not the kiss of death.
Through
I hope
all
not. You're a mush,
facets,
Erickson.
I'm invested in Gabriel Davis. Just looking at what he did when he became a starter in this offense over the last 6 games as a full-time player, averaged nearly 20 fantasy points per game. And even before he became a full-time starter, from week 10 onward, he was PFF's 4th highest graded wide receiver, 11th in yards per route run, wide receiver 25 in total fantasy points, and on a per game basis. So the argument against Davis is that, he didn't have a high target share. And okay, he was a 4th round pick. He had to earn his way to get on the field. The Bills invested into Emmanuel Sanders in the offseason because they weren't sure about Gabriel Davis after his rookie year. He didn't necessarily light up the scoreboard when John Brown was out of the lineup. It's like, okay, we need to make sure our team is set. We need to make sure we have another receiver opposite Stephon Diggs just in case Gabriel Davis doesn't take that step. And to their surprise, Sanders played pretty well to start the year, but then Davis got another opportunity, and he did take that step forward. So I just don't understand. I don't buy the argument where it's like, his target share is really low. It's like, yeah, because he wasn't playing. Like, it's just really hard to get a high target share when you're not on the field, and there was a reason why he was not on the field, because there were other guys that were veterans, that were older.
Right. And McDermott
producing.
clearly, cared about, he wanted to give deference to the veterans, which I understand. I mean, this is about winning games for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
It's not about your fantasy team. They don't care. So you had to take that into account. But look, I think it's pretty obvious as we got to the back end of the year, Andrew, that Davis was the guy who could help you win games.
Exactly. And I mean, you just look at the Chiefs game. The dude went absolutely nuclear. And I think that's just the upside that you're getting if you draft him.
Yeah. Everybody knows since last year I was Mr. Gabriel Davis. And once again, I wish it happened a little sooner, just a little bit. Would have been nice, but better late than never. So time to reinvest. Sometimes we're a year early on players. Like you see it, you see the potential. It just doesn't happen for one way or another. And a lot of times it is on those teams that have expectations because they're afraid to pass the reins to a younger player sometimes, because in the NFL, coaching jobs are scarce and they want to win games. And McDermott, I think, was a little too deferential at times to those veterans. Let's get another guy who might be a veteran, might be younger. I don't know. Let's see what Derek Brown's got in store for us with an upside wide receiver.
Well, I'm going to go, you talked about it, Joe, a perfect segue. It's called a professional transition, a guy that we were a year early
Once
on.
every 10 shows, I get a good professional transition in here.
Well, you nailed this one because we were a year early on the Rashod Bateman breakout season. And last year, we know he entered all the camp hype, and then he was hurt, and we didn't see him for a while. This year, starting off, he's going to have a full offseason to get back to full health. He's 100% walking into this season. And I think that we're looking at massive upside as the X wide receiver in the Baltimore passing attack. And people are like, well, they're still going to run the ball a ton. Okay, that's fine. But who outside of him and Mark Andrews are collecting targets in this passing attack? James Prochet, Devin Duvernay, those are your fighters? These are the people you want to put targets behind? No. It's got to be Rashod Bateman. And I want to go back to how good of a prospect he was. Over his final 2 collegiate seasons, amongst all wide receivers with 50 more targets, 8th in yards per route run, and back-to-back years. We saw the upside in small doses last year, 26th in route win rate versus man coverage. He blew the doors off of Matt Harmon's reception perception work. I think the sky is the limit in this offense Bateman could have a 25-26% target share just like Marquise Brown did last year and do more with it.
Oh, yeah.
And be a top 15, top 12 type of wide receiver. And people are not ready for that conversation because they're still stuck on the fact of, oh, well, Baltimore's going to run a lot. Whatever, you can miss me with all of that. I'm in on Shoddy B.
Yeah, I'm back in there as well. I was very excited about Bateman last year. He was a player that I had high expectations for. Unfortunately, the health didn't work out. But I'm also still in the camp of we haven't seen the best version of the quarterback of Lamar Jackson yet. And I feel like this year we could get it. I mean, we're here, we're pushing for the contract. We got all these things lining up. He's a special talent. And I think people forget just how good of an arm talent he is sometimes because he's just so athletic and running the football and it's so fun to watch. They forget the flick of the wrist, the ball's 60 yards downfield. It's unbelievable what he can do. But the problem is Marquise Brown didn't catch a lot of those balls. I mean, how many times we watched Marquise Brown with opportunity after opportunity just missed, and he still was pretty good last year. And the second half of 2 years ago, he was very good. But again, a lot of that was on mistakes. So many mistakes by the defense where Marquise Brown had that one big touchdown run because of it. Oh, he would just get open. All right, so Gabriel Davis, Rashod Bateman, two great names. Let's go with another one. And this guy, Erickson, that you're talking about, I have moved way up my rankings. You know, you have these guys every year that just start to move up. The more you get, into the season, the more you get closer to the season where you start to feel like this could be it. I feel like this could be truly it for this player in the good way.
I mean, he checks off the box when you're looking at elite quarterback, elite offense, gets touchdown equity. And we saw it in the beginning of last season. First 5 weeks, the wide receiver won in terms of half-point scoring, talking about Mike Williams for the Los Angeles Chargers. And I think it's forgotten that the guy banged up his knee after week 5. And that's kind of when we saw the production kind of falter a little bit. So I'm just all about betting on him cashing in on these end zone targets. Like, the thing is, he has 40 end zone targets since 2019. He's caught 8 for touchdowns, 5 of which came last year. He's been running so cold in the end zone that eventually things are just going to regress positively. And we talked about Austin Eckler on some past shows about how Eckler's probably not going to score 18, 19, 20 touchdowns like he did last year. But the Chargers offense is not going to stop scoring points. So if Eckler's not scoring as many, let's say he only scores 10 touchdowns, okay, like where are those going? It's going to Keenan Allen, maybe a couple here or there. Gerald Everett, probably not. Okay, so that leaves Mike Williams as a guy who's already caught double-digit touchdowns in his career. He's already had 1,000 yards. Like, we've seen the spurts of Mike Williams throughout his career. It's just he's never had one season where you all put it together for one full go, and I'm putting my chips on him for this to be that year.
The realization I'm starting to have when I'm ranking Mike Williams is we keep having this discussion about Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and I love both the talents. Everybody knows I'm a Waddle guy, if I have to pick, but they're right neck and neck for me. And then I keep coming back to all the factors you talked about with Mike Williams. Well, great quarterback, good offense, much more proven situation. Why do I not have Mike Williams closer to Waddle and Tyreek Hill in rankings? And this is what I have significantly moved him up into that grouping. And it's funny because if you look at, the ADP, that's not where it is. I mean, let's just be honest right now. The Mike Williams, ADP is not in that same grouping of guys necessarily. He's at 18. When you see Tyreek Hill up at 9 in some spots in terms of ADP, and Keenan Allen on his teammate at 10, like 18 to 10. That's a pretty big range. Maybe they're closer. Like maybe Allen's a little more like 13. And maybe, Mike Williams is more like 12 or 11. Maybe we should start thinking about that in the touchdown upside. And I think it's looking and predicting 2022 instead of living in the past a little bit more. All right, let's go back to you, Derek Brown. Give me another name of another wide receiver you think has some really high upside this season.
Well, the powers that be ixnayed Cortland Sutton off this list, but
we literally had. It's become a drinking game where every time somebody says Cortland Sutton, our poor audience, they can barely keep up with us right now. But go ahead.
How many shots in are we on Drake London then? Because I've got to be close to
for you. It's definitely a near AA meeting. Like it's getting to that. It's almost an intervention. I think that's where we got to get to. But go ahead, Drake London. Anyway, make the case. Let's hear the upside.
Well, much like How Much Your Mother, y'all haven't put up the flag or the banner for intervention time yet. So I managed to get my spiel in. So Drake London, just looking at this from a macro perspective, he could walk out of this season with a 24-25% target share as a rookie. And regardless of whatever we say, because I know your mind's going there, Joe, about Marcus Mariota,
Well,
this passing
he is the
attack,
quarterback.
This passing attack could be fun, guys. Like, we have Kyle Pitts and Drake London.
Describe your idea of fun, Derek. That's your idea of fun.
I think it could be a lot better than people give it credit for. I mean, we're talking about Kyle Pitts, who had a legendary.
What if I want to give it very little credit? What if the credit's super low?
You already give it very little credit. That's why I give every pushback about Drake London every time I bring up his name on this show.
It's nothing but upside. You're right. By that logic, you are correct.
The talent is there, guys. I mean, 1, to earn the big target share, 2, to create with the ball in his hands. And I think people also miss, if they're looking at the box scores and the numbers he put up last year, it was an abbreviated sample, abbreviated season. Like, him going out with injury, I don't really understand that people really wrap their heads around the fact that Drake London averaged 14.8 targets, 11 receptions, and 135.5 receiving yards per game last year at USC. So I think if I'm going to put chips in on a wide receiver being the breakout, the explosive player, the guy that, you know, out of the rookies that we probably needed to have in drafts, Drake London is that's where my chips are going. And despite Marcus Mariota, I'm betting on talent. I'm betting on the target share and the upside for Drake London in his rookie season.
Question for you. Drake London at 38 or Allen Lazard at 43, seemingly having all the targets, and Aaron Rodgers at quarterback instead?
I'm going to go Drake London.
Erickson, how about you? Same question.
I guess for me, it would probably depend on, I hate to be the guy, it's like, oh, it depends on who I draft. But if I'm looking for a value, like, I'm going to go with Allen Lazard. Like, if I want a more steady commodity in my lineup, I'm going to go with Allen Lazard. I feel more confident about him on a week-to-week basis.
Well, because you feel better about the quarterback play.
Exactly. And right. I think that's something, too, to, like, with the concept of upside, I've done a lot of, like, you know, big brain thinking about it. And when you play on a good offense, your floor gets lifted significantly. And I think that your top tier upside for players is related to the talent, which is why, you know, Debro is on Drake London, because he believes in the talent. He's not like, oh, like, he's going to break out because the Falcons offense is great. Like, obviously not. Like, it's because of Drake London, whereas Lazard is the opposite case. It's like, people want Lazard because he's in the Green Bay Packers offense. And that's kind of, you know, like boosting his production. It's not because we think that Lazard is some godly, untapped, you know, monster.
Right, of course not. Right.
So that's why I think that, you know, for someone that's going to, like, break fantasy, I think Drake London has a better chance of that. You know, if Kyle Pitts goes down, like, he just is more talented. I don't think that's a hot take. Whereas Lazard, I mean, he could still just catch 10 touchdowns because he just plays with Aaron Rodgers. So
right.
I think that he's a better value. But if I need, like, breakout receivers, like, I'd say I feel comfortable, like, with my starting guys and I need a bench guy as my wide receiver 4, I'm taking Drake London because I want to bet on him breaking out and then being, like, a wide receiver 2 that I can start every single week versus Lazard, who, okay, I feel pretty good about starting him, but, you know, how much does he really do? Does he really move the needle for me? I don't think that he has any, like, league winning potential, whereas Drake London, I think, does. So that's kind of how I would view this situation.
I'll take the other cliche analyst projection here, which is in the half, give me Allen Lazard for sure, because that touchdown difference maker is huge on a weekly basis. Standard, obviously, Lazard for me. In the full PPR, I see the appeal potentially of Drake London. I do, because I do think they have no choice but to pepper him with 1 million targets, him and Kyle Pitts. Again, it's the efficiency of those targets, the ability to deliver the football under bad offensive line. And then if they do make a change at some point, Desmond Ridder, what does that look like? I don't know yet. And I hate that. I hate unknowns. I love the talent of London. I do. And Debro makes a really good case for him. Long term, still definitely in on him. But I think we have to ask ourselves, too, in terms of roster construction, do you take the guy with a clear path to targets and touchdown upside, or the guy who is a much better talent, but the situation is potentially far less appealing? And I think that's a great debate and a great conversation to have. And it does come down to your roster construction, what kind of risk you're willing to take. Speaking of risk, Andrew Erickson, who's another guy you want to risk at wide receiver? Do you think he has the big upside to deliver?
Yeah, I like Kadarius Toney for the New York Giants. And really,
you would fit that bill of risk, that's for sure.
Exactly. And this is why, like, Toney's not a player that you're drafting necessarily as a starter, which is why I like him where he goes in drafts, because you can sit him on your bench, see how things play out. If the Giants offense takes a step forward, you're like, and he's the number 1 wide receiver, which he flashed last year. You look at what he did. Target rate per route run of 25% was 7th best in the NFL. Yards per route run ranked 11th, 92nd percentile PFF receiving grade versus single coverage. He can win all around the field. He's making one-handed catches at training camp. I mean, he's electric with the ball in his hands. Like, he jukes guys out. He's fun to watch. And it's just, okay, like, is the Giants offense good or not? Like, that's really the main question here. And I'm willing to sit him on my bench for a couple weeks to see if this Giants offense can improve with Daniel Jones and Brian Daboll and the offensive line improvements. And if they don't, and it's a dumpster fire again, well, bye, Toney. Like, he's going back to the waiver wire, and I don't need him. But you don't need to invest into him as a starter. But the potential that he is then turns around a top 15 season, I think is there for him. So that's why I look at a guy like, again, comparing it back to a guy like Lazard. Lazard is clearly the better value pick, but Toney has way more upside as a truly difference maker on your fantasy team.
Well, it's funny because you got London going at 38th, right, in terms of wide receivers, Lazard at 43, and then Toney at 46, which, so you could kind of choose your own adventure there depending on what kind of investment you want to make. But these are all guys that I think are very worthy in this range. And the 40s have some names in there at wide receiver that I think have lots of potential to jump into the wide receiver 3 or even 2 conversation potentially if everything does break right. And that's, at the end of the day, what wins you fantasy leagues. It's getting good returns on your investment and knowing how to use those late picks with what kind of talent is remaining on the board. So Toney's another guy that, like, I know, Debro, for you, Toney's been a guy you've been drafting a lot in our drafts. I know you've been taking a lot of Drake London. Who's another guy that you want to take at wide receiver that you think has huge upside?
Well, we saw the glimmers of the upside last year, and the talent is real. Darnell Mooney, we've been on the train of good offenses, and I'm not sitting here telling you that the Bears are going to be top 10, top 15 scoring or anything like that. But they have made big improvements to their offensive line over the last few days, and we've seen what Mooney can do whenever he's been called upon to be the number one in the offense. I mean, just harken back to last year, guys. We got a 5-game sample of how good Mooney was. All of his numbers jumped through the roof. Last year, he was averaging 78 receiving yards without Allen Robinson on the field, and that would rank 7th amongst all wide receivers in receiving yards per game. His points per game over that stretch, which is 5 games, okay? Not a huge sample, but not a tiny one. I'm not talking about 2 games, 3 games, what have you, okay? This is almost a third of a season. He was averaging 14.3 PPR points per game. That would have been the wide receiver 24. And that's with him only pacing for 3 receiving touchdowns. Now, we know the volume is there. The talent is also real. Darnell Mooney was 27th in route win rate last year, 11th versus man coverage and win rate. So I understand the size and all that kind of stuff, and people could still bring that up, or the quality of the Bears offense. Darnell Mooney is going to be like the discount version of Deontay Johnson. He's going to soak up a ton of targets.
That's that is an SAT caliber analogy. I like that. That's really good, man. I like that one.
You're welcome, sir. Look, like we talked about, a broken clock is right twice a day. I have my moments that are far and few between. Yeah. Okay, so it is what it is. But I love Darnell Mooney's upside based off of raw volume plus the talent. And we've already heard out of camp that Justin Fields is slinging the ball, throwing darts on a daily basis. Mooney's going to be that guy that stretches the field. So I love his upside, regardless of if people want to poo-poo it because of the Bears offense. I'm still investing.
Mooney's fascinating because this was a guy who didn't have a lot of hype coming into the league either. And then, like, for me, that one emergence, it was I want to say a Thursday night football game against Tampa, where he didn't even play well in terms of stat line, but I just watched him play. This is why watching the games is so important. You know the game I'm talking about, where he was just fighting for every ball.
And Joe, that was the game that Foles airmailed and he burnt. It was either Jamel Dean or Carlton Davis, juked him out of their shoes, and he's where's the ball?
And the ball's nowhere near. And you're just watching Darnell Mooney do good things everywhere, but not showing up in the box score. And box scores matter, stats matters, but there's that little piece too where if you don't really watch, if you're not sitting down to watch some of the games, it's really hard to get edges on other people. But if you saw that and you said, man, if this guy ever gets a real quarterback in 2 years, he could be really good. You start investing in him in Dynasty on the down low, when the Bears are bad. To me, that is the kind of talent too. You have to watch some of these guys on bad teams play because the stats might not be there because they're not necessarily going to be economical, be able to execute. But if you watch certain players and the things they do well, sometimes it's only a matter of time before you get that good quarterback or get that better head coach or that offensive system where things can really turn around quickly. And Mooney still has that. Don't you think, Debro, he has that negative tone around him still because it's the Bears, quote unquote? I feel like it's still attached to him this year.
It's the Bears. It's
in a big way.
it's the Bears stink around them. It's they're not going to score. It's all the jokes about Beavis Jones. It's just, and people are not, they're missing the value here in both talent and the upside for target volume. And I don't really understand it.
All right, Erickson, go back to you. Give me another wide receiver on your list that has big time upside.
I just wanted to hit one thing on Mooney. I think that Debro actually hit on it. Just talking about how with Mooney, he's one of these players that in the way where he goes in drafts, I kind of struggle. I'm like, I don't love anybody in this range, and I'm trying to figure out weighing in because he goes around guys like Brandon Cooks. You're like, Brandon Cooks his value, but what's his upside really? And I think Mooney is kind of the perfect balance of you get a safe projection as he should easily lead the Bears in targets, but then you also have the untapped potential that this is a wide receiver who's flashed his first 2 years, is young, and is entering year 3. When we see guys continue to improve and get better. And his quarterback is going into year 2. So you almost get to double dip. It's like, if Mooney doesn't take this massive leap, okay, well, he still led the Bears in targets, and that's fine. And then you get the additional bonus of, okay, now he did actually get better as an actual player coming from a small school, and then you're just, you're cooking with gas. So I really like the call. So my last guy here is someone that I'm just so intoxicated with, Elijah Moore, New York Jets wide receiver. I know it's weird that I'm talking about Jets players here, but look, this is where you have to find talent at a discount. This is how you do it. You find guys that you think can beat the situation that they're in. And I'm willing to do it when I don't have to take them in rounds 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, when they're going outside those picks. Elijah Moore is outside the top 30 wide receivers. And honestly, when you look at the landscape of those players, I don't know if I can find someone that's more talented than Elijah Moore that's going in that range. I think that he's really the guy that I look at as he's the cheapest talent, the cheapest premium talent that I can buy. And it's because he's on the Jets and because the Jets drafted Garrett Wilson. They have Corey Davis and Zach Wilson is the quarterback. But guys, Elijah Moore was a top receiver during his last 6 games. He was an absolute monster.
Here's a question. He's going back to back right now in ADP with Michael Thomas, who is more proven theoretically. I mean, we just haven't seen it in years with an S now at the end of it. So with those two guys here, with Elijah Moore and Michael Thomas, who would you rather have on your rosters?
I mean, I'm going with Elijah Moore.
Okay. Debro, how about you? Same question, just out of curiosity.
If we're assuming full health for Michael Thomas, I'm actually going to lean Mike Thomas on this one.
See, I'm more of that route, and I've been waiting to watch him run a route, for goodness sake. And I actually got to see it finally and watch him move on some of the highlights this week. And I'm like, okay, finally, because I feel like he's been in witness protection for the last 2 years. You can't get any information. You have no idea what's going on. It's so muddy. I see where you're making that point about Elijah Moore, though, because what's fascinating about Moore, Erickson, is that the fact he did it with all the different quarterbacks, too. So to me, that really tells you how special a talent, and all the backup quarterbacks, too, nonetheless.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about Michael Thomas from, 2019 and 2020. I mean, that's the last time we saw him on the field produce.
My beard was much darker back then. Now everything's gray. That's a fun time. I want to go backwards a couple years.
We saw Elijah Moore last year, not that long ago, be a wide receiver 1. His fantasy points per game would have ranked 5th during his last 6 games overall. The guy is just an absolute stud. He should not have been a 2nd-round pick. And I think it just goes back to the draft capital thing. People just get so fixated. Well, Elijah Moore wasn't a 1st-round pick. He was a 2nd-round pick, even though it was 34 or 36 or something like that. And it's the same reason why Darnell Mooney. It's the same reason why Jerry Jeudy gets drafted so high. Because he went to Alabama and he was a 1st-round pick. But it's all these other guys have outproduced Jerry Jeudy over the last 2 years. Has Darnell Mooney's quarterback play been good? Anyone? No. It's been horrible. And it doesn't matter because he's better than Jerry Jeudy. And he didn't go to Alabama, which is why he goes after him in drafts. But I digress. I just sorry.
Well, if you're going to digress, I figured that was it. Costanza, you leave on a high note there. Let's digress here. One more name at the wide receiver position for you, Derek Brown. Then we'll hit the mailbag question of the day before we get out of here.
Well, we talked about, we mentioned a few different times the shade that draft capital provides. And I mean, come on. We saw the production, but nobody wants to buy into it. Guys, what if, and this is a big what if, what if Amon-Ra St. Brown is just that damn good? What if, guys, over the last part of the season, and everybody's talked about all these stats and stuff, we know the volume was insane and the offense around him was poof, gone. Okay? But with all this crazy volume that Amon-Ra St. Brown got from weeks 13 through 18, he was still elite with it. Over that stretch, 8th in yards per route run, 31.3% target per route run rate. Guys, if we would have zoomed out, that target per route run rate over the entire season, the name of wide receivers for guys that earn targets at a higher rate. This is the list. This is legitimately it. Only Devontae Adams, Antonio Brown, Deontay Hardy, A.J. Brown, and Cooper Kupp. Now, I know Hardy snuck in there, but Hardy is also an efficiency diamond, okay? The
Don't
rest
you
of that
fist pump
list...
that, Erickson.
Hey,
you put that fist
he's
pump
from
away.
Worcester, Massachusetts, baby.
I know.
Worcester,
Put that
Mass.
fist pump away. Get
There we
that
go.
noise out of there. Continue, Derek.
Homegrown,
man.
baby.
We are a pro Deontay Hardy podcast, so just put that out there. But besides that, that is the type of talent that Amon-Ra St. Brown possesses. What if he is that good, guys, and he earns targets, even if we water that down a little bit? His upside is huge. And when we're talking about, I already talked about DeAndre Swift. If this offense is better this year, Amon-Ra St. Brown and DeAndre Swift could be the two that are spearheading this attack. And so I'm willing to buy into the talent and the flashes we saw last year as being, okay, what if this is legitimately real? If Amon-Ra St. Brown even water down some of that production, pays off at that type of level this season, he's going to be a steal and the upside is real.
I think this is fascinating because just yesterday, before we assembled this list of players and all this stuff, I was having this same conversation in my head when I was going through my ranks, just saying, hey, idiot, you loved this guy last year going into the league. Then he performed and went above even your expectations. Why aren't you valuing him more? And by idiot, I was talking to myself. And you know what? I'm glad to hear another idiot who I love say it out loud, and that's you. And I feel like even if he's not that dude, I can't expect Jameson Williams coming off the knee injury to be brilliant the first 8 games of the season, right? I can't. He is my dude. That's my guy. Like, in terms of talent, I think he's the best wide receiver in the class coming in. I just think he is unbelievable. But at the same time, I have to be realistic. He is much more of a second half play than a first half. He's more of a draft and stash than a guy who's going to impact your initial run. He's more of a playoff run guy. But you got to get to the playoffs. And what if Amon-Ra St. Brown is a guy that helps carry you there? And I feel like he gets passed over and passed over and passed over every draft. He's going right in that same section of Gabriel Davis. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's Elijah Moore, Michael Thomas. If you are somebody that goes RB early, this is the grouping. In fact, I'll throw this out. The guys we talked about, Rashod Bateman is 27. Gabriel Davis is 29. Amon-Ra St. Brown is 30. So right, you could get 2 of these guys potentially right there. And if you are somebody that wants to hit RB early, these are the names you have to start to embrace, because this is how you find the upside. This is how you make up not having the elite quote unquote wide receiver. So the names we talked about at wide receiver: Gabriel Davis, Mike Williams, Kadarius Toney, Elijah Moore, Rashod Bateman, Drake London, Darnell Mooney, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I will draft all of these guys happily, even Drake London. I just won't get a chance to because Derek will draft him before. All right, let's go to our Discord question of the day. And our Discord is filled with amazing people. I mean, whether it's Tequila Mockingbird, Go Cards, the Wonky Penguin. I mean, all the people that, I can't wait to get on stages with Embarrassed again. I saw him in the chat the other day in the comment section of our YouTube. These people who wait for us. You can be part of this crew. And it is a great crew. Incredibly supportive, incredibly football centric, that absolutely love fantasy football. You can join for free, but if you want to get in the Discord in terms of stages and the AMAs and all the other stuff that we do, and you have more access to us, the analysts, that's the way to do it. Oh, right. Remember the offers I talked about? That's how you do it. Go to fantasypros.com/offers, and then you get that too. So many great things. But anyway, let's get to this question from Illness over there. Illness wants to know, in a 12-man half PPR with yardage threshold bonuses as the 1-1 pick, what do you think, or do you think it's insane to go with Derrick Henry over Jonathan Taylor? It's risky, but I feel like if he played in the playoffs, he should be ready for the first game of the season. Have you heard anything that would state that he shouldn't be fully healthy? McCaffrey's too injury prone for me, and Taylor should be over Eckler, with the whispers that Eckler is saying that he might get toned down a little bit. So do you think in a half PPR where touchdowns matter just a bit more, in my opinion, actually it's a fact, not even my opinion, do you think you can make the case for Derrick Henry 1-1? Erickson, we'll start with you.
No, I think that's insane.
That's because of the foot.
No, it's because of everything.
Okay.
I don't see a world where Derrick Henry scores more fantasy points than Jonathan Taylor. So,
Okay, let's go back to you. Is Derek Brown, do you think that Derrick Henry can get back to being the guy again and being the, I mean, he's not that far removed from, remember, it's funny, we all sat here and talked about, oh my goodness, look at Derrick Henry. He hasn't played in 8 weeks and he's still the RB3. Like, why doesn't that matter to anyone except me? Why doesn't that matter?
You're setting me up here, Joe. I know you're setting me up here.
Half PPR, not the full PPR where you could go your McCaffrey rant. This is just the half.
I'm still taking Jonathan Taylor. Come on.
Okay, all right. It's just like to have the conversation. We sat here last year and we had no conversations. We all just got lazy and went back. Well, it's got to be Christian McCaffrey again. We got to give him a pass. Everybody gets a pass, right? Maybe every year it shouldn't be a consensus 1-1.
This isn't
it
about
should
Christian
be a dialogue.
McCaffrey. But this isn't about Christian McCaffrey. Jonathan Taylor's not coming off an injury. He's the only one that's not coming off an injury.
That's fine. It's fine. But everybody also wants
about Derrick Henry versus Derrick Henry of younger and maybe, honestly, arguably a better pure rusher. Is that a crazy hot take? I don't think it is, but
the Nick Chubb truthers are coming for you, J bro.
Hey, look, I love Chubb. Do not get me wrong.
Everybody loves Chubb except in fantasy. That's the shtick.
Everybody loves Chubb except for the Cleveland Browns.
They're going to love Chubb a little bit more that they've got if Deshaun Watson plays more games than he sits out. That's going to be a very different circumstance potentially for him fantasy-wise. A lot more scoring opportunity. So I think the consensus answer here is it's still Jonathan Taylor. But
yes,
I think it's worth the question. Again, that's free to join over at fantasypros.com/chat. to join our Discord. And once again, to be a premium member, you get access to the Discord. You get the draft assistant with Sync, which links up to all your leagues, whether it's ESPN, Yahoo, it doesn't matter. It'll help you go through with the suggested picks and be that other voice inside the draft with all the intelligence and insights. And you can get that for 12 months for free. Our Discord, our My Playbook, everything. Set all your lineups from Fantasy Pros, from the app. Oh my goodness, all at once. You don't have to go from app to app to app. Go over to fantasypros.com/offers to check that out. And of course, make sure you're watching us on the YouTube channel. We want to hear your comments. Who are your big time, high upside wide receivers, running backs, quarterbacks? Drop the comments in the chat. And don't forget at fantasypros.com/contest, we are giving away that CD Lamb autographed jersey thanks to our friends at pristineauction.com. So go get in on that as well at fantasypros.com/contest. And don't forget, when you go to the YouTube channel, click that little bell, ding, till it goes ding. You gotta have the ding. If you don't have the ding, you haven't really subscribed to the Fantasy Pros YouTube. And then you know every time a new piece of content drops here for in-season content, for preseason content, we've got you covered here. So that'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For Derrickson, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.